Well, hello everybody, and welcome to the continuation of our Ask project. This is Michael Robbins, and I'm filling in for my wife Tuya, who is out of town, and she's by far the greater expert on these matters than I am when it comes to invoking the soul of nations. But I'll do my best while she is away. It is so important that we read the Tibetan's book, The Destiny of the Nations. It's a wonderful book. It was written in the 1940s, and there have been so many new nations added to the list of nations that existed at that time, but many of the more prominent nations were discussed by the Tibetan. Their rays were given, their soul ray and personality ray in many instances, their astrological qualities were given, and something about the destiny of these nations in fulfilling their soul possibilities. Now, it is not desired that there be a totalitarian or completely homogeneous distribution of humanity. Each one of the nations provides a particular gift, and we need heterogeneity and unity simultaneously, so that the qualities of the soul can indeed arise. Now, this will take special cultivation of the causal body of the nation, and not everybody is, all nations are at the same point at the same time. Just as in the human family, there are people who are initiates or disciples or aspirants, and others simply living as personalities, and others not living as personalities at all, not quite there. So it is with the nations of the world, some more advanced than others, and the advanced nations are trying to become discipleship nations, if I can put it that way. Now, today we are going to work with an important country in South America, Colombia, named pretty much for Christopher Columbus, who was said to have penetrated that area when looking for the great rich Indies. This country, as you can see from the map, is located at the upper end of South America. It's pretty well, in terms of longitude, it's pretty well under New York and New Jersey and the East Coast, and it ties in with Central America and with Panama. The Panama Canal is there, giving some sort of passage, important passage. This particular map that we're looking at, the red areas show where there's great unrest and terror threats. You know, this is a ubiquitous kind of thing at the present time. It's unfortunate, but so many human beings seem to think they need to resort to violence to get their will accomplished. And we can see that in South America, it is indeed a red area. This is a country with well, almost 50,000 people, about 48,000 and some 48 million and 700,000. There is the speaking primarily of Spanish, but interestingly enough, let's see if I've got this correct, there's some 63 or so indigenous languages for the individuals who are the original residents of this country. So 68 actually ethnic languages and dialects. English is also an official language. The ethnic groups of Colombia, 86% mestizo and white, and about 10% black population, and 3.4 Amerindian, and so forth. The government, it's a unitary presidential constitutional republic. The present president, Juan Manuel Santos, it is a modern country. It was born, its independence was recognized in 1819. There are different horoscopes for Colombia, and the one we tend to use is the one that shows us with a Sagittarius sun. And Pisces rising. It's not a country that has been devoid of suffering. Well, what are? But in this Pisces rising, and it's declared Independence Day, Saturn, Chiron, and Pluto, and those are not easy planets, they're all rising in the sign of suffering, which is Pisces. Lots of squares here, but it's basically a Sun in Sagittarius country, and Neptune is there, conjunct the Sun and conjunct the Moon. The Moon is in Capricorn, and Neptune, well, you know, Colombia presently infamously is known for its drug cartels, and we see such an elevated Neptune, but it shows also great promise for the future. A lot of these countries in Latin America have a very strong sixth ray at this time. So let's see here. I'm doing my best here to follow the notes. You see there the picture in green, I think, of what Colombia looks like, where it's situated. And here are some images of the population density of this country. It's bordered by Brazil and Peru and Venezuela. And you know, it's one of the prominent countries in this area. It has somehow a very ancient past. Here are all the different areas. Ecuador, Peru, Brazil, and Venezuela are the bordering countries. Well, as you may know, there was such a thing as the Temple of Ibez in the center of South America long, long ago. DK says that the first Shambhala was founded there. That Shambhala was 17 million years ago. There's a sense when you look at some of the indigenous art and the artifacts and some of the ancient cities and so forth, that the influence of that great spiritual center a long time ago was still prevalent throughout South America. Here's an image of a monument here called the Hypogeia of the Tierra Adentro culture. And we can see, you know, how very ancient it is. I have the feeling, you know, that when people when people tell you how old certain peoples are and certain cultures and so forth, we have a sense of myopia. We kind of don't realize the tremendous antiquity of these groups. The antiquity, you know, is given in books like The Secret Doctrine. And if we really want to know what has been going on in the history of humanity, I would suggest that we take out our Secret Doctrine and study very carefully, because as Alice Bailey said, you know, that's a book that gives information found in no other place. And I think much about South America will be revealed in that book. Here further, you see some of the San Agustin. It's an archaeological part, but you can see how very ancient the statues are. I think always underestimated. This is something called the Lost City, and it was discovered in the jungle, I think, by those who were hunting for various kinds of treasures, and they came upon this overgrown city. It's said to be older than Machu Picchu. Yeah, it's the La Ciudad Perdida. It said it was built by the Tavarona people around 800 AD, 600 years before the Machu Picchu. But you know, I have a feeling that some of these sites are very, very ancient. I have a sense of the tremendous antiquity. I'm no historian, but I sense from reading the Secret Doctrine and other texts about the history of humanity that these are very, very ancient sites and maybe have been built and rebuilt many, many times. There's a lot of the legends of El Dorado, and I think El Dorado, you know, the cities of gold, and that enticed the Europeans to come over and, well, kind of exert the conquistador mentality. They brought kind of Christianity with them as well. But the cities of gold really, you know, are more Atlantean legends when Master DK tells us that there was a tremendous kind of luxury in those periods. And perhaps the mysteries of alchemy were known, and perhaps there was much more of this ostentatious luxury than we can possibly duplicate now. Anyway, it was a great incentive for the conquistadors, and this shows a sort of a pre-Columbian era, a high quality of culture and goldsmithing. Here, more of the same. The ceremony of the legend of El Dorado. Quite amazing artifacts. It was sometimes called to the Europeans the New Granada, I guess named for a city or an area in Spain. So there is you know, a very rich history here, and humanity needs to rediscover its history so it can get a sense of proportion about what it really is and how long it's taken to develop. Here we have, you know, this was the influence of the church, and some of it actually was benevolent. You get the sense that with the conquistadors came the cross and the church, sort of the first and the sixth ray together, and then the second ray as well, or maybe the first and sixth ray together. And it was the imposition of religion upon the indigenous people. But here is a certain Father Peter Claver. He was a Jesuit priest, and he had quite a motto. He dedicated his life to helping the Africans who had been brought to this area, and he called himself, interesting, the slave of slaves forever. So there's a sign of humility there, and he is the servant of those who were at the bottom of the social ladder. So they concentrated the people of the African ancestry mostly in the coastal areas. These slides are, you know, a little, you know, they give you a flavor. They're not exactly completely in perfect order, you know, for history. There were many battles here because Colombia was located in a pivotal place, and the English and Spanish were fighting for domination of the Caribbean, and this was one of those battles where the English didn't do so well. Actually, it became, you know, the Caribbean became a predominantly Spanish area. Well, really, you know, when you think about Pisces rising like that, it is an area that has had a lot of suffering and a lot of turmoil, and you could call this colonialism, really. It's the imposition of the more advanced cultures upon the indigenous cultures, and of course the indigenous people, they did know something, really. But, you know, the Spanish people, with their Catholicism and their very prominent sixth ray and seventh ray and their Sagittarius and Capricorn qualities, they thought they knew everything and they could impose their way upon the native people. Here are some of the contemporary individuals, prominent, positive people. He says here, the best experience in the world is to serve humanity, okay? And here also, people dedicated to cultivate intellect, also ideas of peace and justice, have an inner force that impels them to work in favor of those who need their help, regardless of race, religion, or nationality. This is very altruistic. There are many people like this. The new group of world servers. The knowledge that we are continuing to build a better world must be the highest of human aspiration. So these are people who from Colombia have been philanthropists and men of goodwill. Here we have in the streets of Colombia demonstrations against the violent groups. There have been many violent groups, and you know, the trouble is many of these violent paramilitary groups, they live off the drug trade. So it's not exactly that you can trust the people in the military to put down that drug trade, because they benefit financially from it immensely. Here are some of the native people, indigenous people. Yeah, okay. Well, there's been all kinds of abuses of these people. And they are, you know, in a way, one could say that the Atlantean culture was very strong in this area a long time ago, and perhaps some of these people are the remnants of that great Atlantean civilization. They're on their way up, of course, and the abuse has to stop. Here are some of the politicians who are trying to lead the country forward at the summit of the Pacific Alliance. And here, you know, the tremendous colorful quality in the people. Such an expression of music and literature. You've got to think that the sixth ray and the fourth ray are going to be really important. Amazing wealth of colorful display. Here, a cultural festival, a man eating fire, a puss sending forth fire. Anyway, you know, this is the, can you see a more fourth ray demonstration than that? And here we have same kind of masking. You know, this shows the imagination and creativity of the people, and the people that are offering the food for sale. And look at the colors, oh my goodness. I think that South America is very expressive in that respect. I keep on thinking about the rays of Brazil with its fourth ray soul and its second ray personality. I think the 246 line is very, very prominent, and also the sign Sagittarius, which carries a lot of the fourth ray and sixth ray, and even some of the fifth ray. So these, you know, this is more of the same. Okay, people of all different ethnicities. Here are some of the tribes. These are the indigenous, how does it say, Arcoacos, okay. And, you know, there's quite a contrast. Indigenous people, they live on the steep slopes of the Sierra Nevada range, and they are sustaining the balance of the spiritual and ecological. Okay, so it's the Kogi and the Arhuaco tribes here. You know, there's a huge contrast between the, well, we can maybe call them civilization within the big cities, and the people who are in the rural areas and in the jungles. It's a great disparity. It's one of the problems of the country. It's a great disparity in wealth. And this is wealth and opportunity. This is a problem. Here are some of the architectural wonders. It's largely a Catholic country, strongly Christian. But, you know, interestingly enough, has a high literacy rate. About 90, you know, there's just negligible difference between men and women, and it's up there around 93 or 94%. So this is a boon for the future, I would say. You know, Christianity is up there in the 90% area. So let's see what we have here. Oh, I don't know how that got in there, but here's a roller derby. Well, I'm sure there are many kinds of sports operative here. Here's the Nobel Prize winner, Gabriel Garcia Marquez, and an old picture of a man who was one of the greatest exponents of Colombian literature in the 19th century, Jorge Isaacs. He must have been sort of a mixture of South American and Northern culture. Here's some of the works of art, sculptor Fernando Botera. I think we can expand, and the guitar. You know, you just can't escape the guitar when you think about South America, when you think about Colombia. And I'm thinking what a Sagittarian country it is, with the Sun and Neptune conjuncted in Sagittarius, and Uranus in Sagittarius too, and Sagittarius ruling the bow is the guitar. You know, from the bow came the guitar, from the hunter of Sagittarius. You twang that bow often enough and you get the idea you might be able to make a guitar eventually. So it's one of the most important of the musical instruments. Here are some of the cultural events. It's the oldest cinema event in Latin America. And, you know, more of the architecture. Bogota is the greatest of the cities. Here's one of the biggest theaters. Important festivals held here. Look at that. That's the Salt Cathedral of Zipaquira, if I'm pronouncing it correctly. Oh, it must be an amazing energy in there. And this is more about the Salt Cathedral. Looks like an amazing place to visit with the lighting prominent. Here are some of the cities. Clinics and hospitals are some of the best in Latin America. The architecture is of various kinds. Here's Bogota. Here's Medellin. We hear a lot about drugs in connection with the cartel of Medellin. But, you know, this drug problem, when the access to the soul is finally cultivated, the drug and alcohol and tobacco problem will wane. But right now, we have these appetites, which are not soul appetites. What are you going to do? And people provide for the requests of those who have the money to pay. So, you know, the problem is as much in the northern countries as in the southern countries. When the appetite for these things dies down, so will the crime associated. Here is Cali, another great city. Here is Barranquilla, another great city. Here's the colorful Cartagena. And let's see. Yeah, it looks like one of those old, colorful streets. Almost looks like New Orleans, but you can see the sort of cathedral here as well, that influence. Here's some of the government buildings. The principal workplace of the President of Colombia, the Palace of Justice. And here's some different kind of architecture, kind of a neo-Spanish influence. Oh, here's something really different. This is in Tayrona National Park, and this is a kind of architecture of the indigenous people. And we can see it's, you know, made from what we have in the jungle and available to them. And yet there is such a diversity of climates in Colombia, very many different kinds of areas of weather and terrain. Here's in the top of the ice caps here in Nevado de Ruiz, ice-capped climate, but here's a tundra climate, you know, that also exists here. More the lake region, oceanic climate. Here, Mediterranean climate. And let's see what else. Cold desert climate. All right. So much diversity, and of course this diversity is equaled in the animal and plant life. The tropical savanna climate and the rainforest climate. There's such diversity for a middle-sized country. Again, hot desert climate and the tropical wet and dry climate, you know. And then now the diversity, you know, such biodiversity. I think it's second in the world in terms of its biodiversity. Here's a new species of animal that was discovered in the Americas, 35 years. Can be found in Colombia. I'm not sure what this is. Olinguito, is that it? Some carnivore. I mean, there's so many species of plants and animals that still have not been discovered. Oh, and here's a nice harmless looking little frog, but watch out, he's one of those poison dart frogs, so you don't want to be grabbing him, and you certainly don't want to be eating him, you know, because you die quickly. And as we know in the jungle, the natives, the indigenous people have had their blowguns, and they use the nerve poison of these colorful frogs to hunt and also to deal with enemies. The pink porpoise, oh goodness, amazing, in the Colombian Amazon, quite quite an unusual animal. Well, that's it. The biodiversity is really amazing. What does it say? Megadiverse, you know, how does it say? 40,000 to 45,000 plant types, 2,000 species of marine fish, 1,900 species of birds. You know, it's near the equator. It's extremely rich in its in what the Earth has produced. So you know, it would be a place to visit with your eyes open and just see the amazing wealth of nature. And of course, that fits with the Sagittarius quality too, doesn't it? Earth is the hierarchical ruler of Sagittarius, and there we have the great, I can only call it the fecundity of the Earth. Well, there are a lot of problems, you know. The disparity between the rich and the poor is extreme. The opportunity offered in the cities is considerable, and in the countryside, very little. There's been the abuse of the indigenous people, but you know, that is, well, it's a sad story. It's happened everywhere. And there's no way that we can look back on our history and try to deny that. It's happened in the Americas altogether, and wherever a more technically advanced culture moves in, it always seems to exploit and suppress. But maybe with long-term benefits, it's hard to know how the Manu is really working on these things as one subrace succeeds another. But hopefully the ways of love and the ways of wisdom will begin to take over after this fifth root race, fifth subrace in which we're in now, and perhaps the sixth root race, which will be the intuitive root race, and very connected with South America, very connected with Brazil and with the second ray and so forth, and the sixth ray, maybe a different way of advancing cultures will be found. Well, you know, you have a certain humility when you kind of look at these nations. Just scratching the surface, you know, you could do tremendous research on these things and find out all about the people and their problems, but the one thing that has to be provided is a greater equality of opportunity to the benefits of such a nation. And we have to, as we call upon the soul of the nation, to subdue the kind of criminal element which just feeds into the selfish life of certain people and the selfish life of people for whom the drugs are provided. South America has a tremendous future, especially in the sixth root race, which will be, you know, coming up in another couple of thousand years and will last for, DK tells us, 10 million years. That's a long time. So the way is being paved for an intuitive, artistic, beautiful root race, which will give us the abstract mind and will give us the intuition in a way that we have not had it up to this point. So we want to invoke the souls of these nations so the very best in them, the very best qualities can come out, and we can help do this through meditation. That's what we're doing. We're trying to reinforce the Tibetans' prophecies in such a book as The Destiny of the Nations and bring out the very best through our meditative techniques. So let's leave our pink porpoise behind and get more into our meditation. Here's a picture of a triangle, you know, and it's one of the most important things. The etheric bodies of all the sacred planets are organized in triangles, and to the extent that we can connect with each other in triangles, we're helping to reorganize our etheric body, a non-sacred planet, the Earth, an etheric body with many, many squares in it, and we're trying to bisect the square to provide this more spiritual circulation of energy. So just think for a moment of that network of triangles which can carry the soul of the nations and the soul of any particular nation. And by doing your triangle work, you're really you're helping to move towards the day when we will have a sacred planet. And all the work we do here is in connection with the spiritual hierarchy of our planet, and the great Lord, the Lord Maitreya, is the head of that hierarchy. The Christ, the reappearing Christ, who will be with us during the age of Aquarius, almost the entirety of the age of Aquarius, the next 2,000 or so years. I'm sorry, my Finnish is not very good, so if we have Finnish people with us, on the screen is the little mantra here, but I'll do it in English. So we attune with the Christ, we attune with his hierarchy, and we express our solidarity with the great Lord and with his hierarchy, because in a way they are the soul of our planet. They have that soul triadal energy, that's where they live, at that point of tension. So we say and mean, we know, O Lord, of light and life, about the need. Touch our hearts anew with love, so we too can love and give. We have gathered in your name, Lord Maitreya. Be with us. This is a very real energy. The Christ is a very real energy, and as the world Savior and the world Teacher, there's no real progress through the Aquarian age, the kind of progress that is intended without his presence. Here, I'll do it right this time. Let's say this together. I know, or we know, O Lord of life and love, about the need. Touch our hearts anew with love, that we too may love and give. The soul is love, and when we invoke the soul of nations, whatever ray it may be that's coming through, it's an aspect of the great energy of love. And we know that when we're aligned with the Christ, he has promised us the following. He for whom the whole world waits has said that whatsoever shall be asked in his name, with faith in the response, will see it accomplished. And we certainly at this point are asking, invoking the soul of Colombia, a prominent nation in South America, so that that soul may come through as part of the unity of nations in that great continent. We want this energy to enter, help all the people, and so the soul can emerge in that nation and in every nation. Of the 5 planetary centers here, it's pretty much New York which is controlling the North America and South America, and New York has a Ray 2 soul and a Ray 3 personality, and in a planetary sense, as a city it has the Ray 2 and 3, but in a planetary sense it's the sixth ray of idealism. So we align with that energy coming out of New York. The love, wisdom, the intelligence, and the idealism, very important in South America, and especially for a Sagittarian nation. I mean, a Sagittarian Pisces nation. Sixth ray comes through both of those. So from above, the great energies can descend, and they can be received by the people and change the direction, change the way, so that peace comes and a greater quality of sharing. You know, it's been a bloody history in so many places, and that's very true of Colombia as well, and it still is, as selfishness tries to gain the upper hand, but we are working with the soul, and we direct it towards that nation, asking in the name of the Christ the descent of the soul energy. Those are the 5 planetary centers. And we, wherever we may be, and we can direct our thought in any direction for the well-being of any particular place. And that's what we're doing, country after country. And here are so many of the nations that we have thought about, learned about in their tremendous diversity, but always the soul is waiting to come through, the unifying factor. And DK may not have given us the soul ray or personality ray of all these nations, or even the astrology of all of them, but there are ways to find the major energies, and that's what we're looking for. Unity in diversity, diversity in unity. The amazing color of Colombia and the amazing color of all these nations, each making its own contribution, so that the will of the Father can express on our planet. What a tremendous variety, and one day what a tremendous harmony it will be. Not yet, but as the soul ray of these nations expresses itself, greater harmony is possible between them. Personality ray expression will always lead to division, conflict. So we focus on this nation, Colombia, as a group together we are, and we, as souls together, we invoke the descending soul of this nation, Colombia. May the soul infuse the personality of this nation. May the light of mind help to solve the many problems, the light of mind fed by the light of the soul. We'll have an Om to confirm this idea. You know, maybe every day you can flash upon the nations of the world and just take a few seconds and call for the emergence of the soul everywhere, in all the tremendous diversity, but a diversity which leads to harmony. We can do that. Doesn't take a long time, and that may be one of the benefits of our Ask project here, part of which is to invoke the soul of nations, to counteract the kind of totalitarianism that the Black Lodge would like to see take place, a rigid, unimaginative, oppressive totalitarianism, and we can counter that with the unity in diversity of the soul. We can do that, you know, the power of your thought is very great. So you be the one as the soul who runs your mind and directs its power of thought to good things, good things. And here's so many flags of the different nations put together, and then a picture of a lighted world. A lighted world, the network of triangles is doing its work, and the men and women of goodwill are standing forth as points of brighter light, helping to raise the points of dimmer light where the mass of humanity can be seen, and more light, till our Earth becomes a great station of light in the solar system. The theme of light is very important to our planetary logos, and we will become that sacred planet that is destined. It's not immediate. The whole system of initiation for the planetary logos it takes a long time compared to the human phases of initiation, but okay, we're on our way. And one of the best ways that we can be on our way is to use the great invocation, this invocation of power and light, a great mantra released by Sanat Kumara, the Lord of the world, when the Christ, after a 9-year decision period, agreed to reappear in physical form, I suppose using his Maya Varupa, for the duration of the age of Aquarius. In a way, we had him in early days, 2,000 years ago, for 3 years. Not very much. Of course, he's been working behind the scenes all this time, and now just imagine the emergence of the great Lord for hundreds of years, for centuries, during the age of Aquarius. What a tremendous difference that will make as we human beings begin to enter the fifth kingdom of nature. So now we will have the great invocation. Well, thank you everyone for being with us. Here are some flags of the nations, not all of them, but what a marvelous, colorful display it makes. We have our Ask project, you know. Kind of wish Tui was here to do this, but okay. I'm filling in for the time being. And our triangles work on Wednesdays, the reappearance of the Christ on Thursdays, the glamour meditation on Fridays. That's not a broadcast, that's a webinar. The Soul of the Nations today, Saturday, and on Sundays, the Invocation of Money for hierarchical purposes. Here is kind of our plan for the future. And we'll continue to try to keep this regular meditation schedule going so that we all can participate using the soul-infused mind to be a power on the inner planes and help make things better. Now, we're going to go on, and I hope I can... well, maybe here it is, calling Maitreya Buddha. Yeah. So we're going to close our meditation with this beautiful song about Maitreya Buddha. And just, you know, kind of listen to the words. We want to call in this great being, and he will know when the time is right to appear. It has a lot to do with the condition of human consciousness, and there we can help a bit, okay, can't we? So here we go, calling Maitreya Buddha.